Hey everybody, welcome to Art with Lisa Studio. I'm so glad you came. Today we are going to draw the human eye. It's a fascinating subject, and if you've been a sketcher or a doodler, you've probably tried one before. But today we're going to improve what you are drawing. So grab your supplies, pencil, paper, and eraser, and we're going to show you in a short 30-minute class how to do the basic shape, how to add values, a little bit of detail, and before you know it, it'll be popping off the page. We have lots more classes like this on our website, artwithlisa.com. If you want to show us what you finished, drop us a picture, add it into the comments here. We love to see what you're doing, and we have random contests for people who send us those. So be sure to share it with us, and let's get started today. Let's start with the supplies, which we already listed. I'm going to do this with a number 2 pencil, as most of you will be using that. If you have a set of drawing pencils, you might want an HB, a 2H, and a 4B, which is the heavier, softer lead to make it darker. But for today, I'm just going to teach this with a regular pencil since that's what most of you have. Some type of eraser. I have a kneaded eraser, which you can self-clean, and they're really handy because you can make a tiny little point to do tiny little lifts if you need. Something to blend with. If you have a blending stick, that's great. If not, a Q-tip will work, or even a Kleenex. And for those of you who are afraid you can't draw a real circle, you might want a ruler to do the circle. So let's get started. Before we start, I want to tell you some things, and I want you to look at some things about the eye. So we're going to zoom in here, and I want to show you some things that I want you to be aware of while we are doing this. So the eye, the iris, the colored part that we all love, is a circle. Inside of that is another circle, the pupil. The eyelid over the top usually cuts down into that circle. So you can't, unless somebody has their eyes all the way open in surprise or fear, usually that top lid kind of lays down over the top of the circle. The bottom lid, different on everybody, but for the most part, it just barely touches that bottom lid. The eye crease, which is our eyelid, is another line. Really the only hard lines we're going to be drawing today are the edges of the iris, underneath that eyelid there, and the crease of the eye. No other hard lines, and that's a mistake that a lot of people make with beginning drawing. The eyelashes are thicker on top than they are on the bottom. They're thicker on the outside edge and directional. They go from the side straight up and down to curving left, and they get thinner and shorter as they get closer to the tear duct. On the bottom, they're much more sparse, shorter, and thinner. So I want you to pay attention to those things. This highlight here, the white, is the whitest white of our drawing today. A lot of people think the white part of your eye, or the sclera, is white, and yes, it is, but because of the shadows on it, because of the viscosity of it, it's not really white. We want the lightest light to remain the reflection, the highlight there, and the darkest darks will be in the corners of the eye where it goes away, because the eyeball is, after all, a sphere. So as it recedes away from the light source, it's going to get darker, lighter to the front. So I want you to think about shading. I want you to think about shapes and eyelashes and their directions. And we get a whole lot more detail into the anatomy of the eye and really how to do this almost photorealistically in our class online. So let's get started. You've got your pencil, and to begin with, we're going to draw a circle. Now, a lot of people are intimidated by drawing a circle, but it doesn't have to be perfect to start with. We just want something, draw very lightly, and you can sketch it in. It's roughly the size of a dime. If you want to trace a dime, you can do that. But I'm just going to lightly pencil in my circle, okay? And like I told you, if you really have trouble with this, you can take a ruler and measure, say, 3/4 of an inch. Draw a line that's 3/4 of an inch long. I'm going to do this somewhere else so it doesn't mess everything up. Let's say we draw this 2, 4, 6, and then you want to draw a center point. So you would just draw a center point there. You got your line. Then you go up and down, do the same length. So you have even parts of your T. And you've given yourself, that's not very good. I wasn't measuring very good. I'm an artist after all. We don't need rulers. And then you just basically join the ends of this, and that will give you your circle. So if you're really intimidated and just feel like there is no possible way I can do a circle, then go ahead and measure it out, okay? But we are going to freehand this. Give yourself permission to learn something or fail. That's part of learning, right? So we have our circle in. Now you want to put a smaller circle on the inside of it, which is the pupil. And again, it's about half the size of your big circle. What I'm looking at as I draw this circle is the distance between here and here, all the way around. We want that to be even, 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 all the way around, okay? So very lightly, I'm penciling in the pupil. So we're learning some terms here. The colored part is the iris. The inside part, that's the black hole, is the pupil. Now, I'm going to put a tiny little dot right in the center of that. Now, generally, the width of the iris is the same distance from the middle of your eye to the corner of your eye. So, super easy measuring tool here. I just use my fingernail, put the tip of my pencil right here at one side, put my fingernail at the other side, and that's my measurement. So I go to the right, I'm putting my fingernail on this little dot right here in the middle, and then I just press down and say, all right, that's the same measurement that way, and then I do it this way. I'm measuring the width of this eye without a ruler, very artistically. Do the same thing. Go out, put a little dot. So here's my dot, and here's my dot. And those tell me that they should be the same distance. Here to here, here to here, here to here. That's standard, really, for eyeballs. So now I want you to draw a little straight line right along the bottom, and very, very light again, of that little circle. If I'm going too fast, don't worry. You can just watch this. This video will be available indefinitely on this channel here, so you can come back and watch it. If you just want to watch today and come back and do the drawing, that's fine too. So I've got my little line here at the bottom, and I'm going to make this the corner of the eye, the corner of the eye. I'm using these measurements as where to start it and where to end it, okay? So over here, I'm going to use this intersection as where I start. So I'm going to make a curve up, and like I said before, we don't go all the way to the top of that circle. We want to cut a little bit low because the eyelid sits down over the top of that circle. And then I come down and I meet here. Okay, then in this corner, there's a little bit of a fish hook, the corner of your eye where the tear duct is. So we'll go ahead and put that in. And then from that fish hook, we'll make a little dip up and then back down. And we rest it right along the base of that big circle, which is the iris. Okay, so you have your basic shapes in there now. So let's get rid of the lines we do not need. We do not need this line up here, the top of our circle, because it is hidden by the eyelid. We do not need these little end measurements anymore. So erase them on both sides. And whatever eraser you have is great. Sometimes the ends of number 2 pencils get kind of crusty, as mine is. And we do not need the straight line that goes through the middle of all of this. So let's erase that out. Erase, erase, erase. Okay? And when this is magnified, whoo, you are seeing every little detail. So you can just kind of ignore some of these. We're going to cover them up. But we just want them basically out of the way. We don't need those for measuring anymore. Okay? Now, go ahead and reestablish if you erased any of your lines. We got that. It's not a good idea to just, unless you're really experienced, to just go in and draw 2 brackets for an eye. Because very commonly you get those crooked or they don't match. It's best to always do your full circle. Okay, so we're going to do the top lid also and the bottom lid. They're very thin. As it comes close to the tear duct on this side, it almost disappears. So very close, and then as it comes up over the top, it gets a little bit wider, and as it comes down on this side, it's the widest. So that is the lid that the eyelashes come out of. On the bottom side, same thing. It's wider on the outside, and as it comes in towards the tear duct, it almost disappears. So very, very thin line, okay? So those are our 2 lids. Now we're going to come in and put the actual crease of the eyelid, and I'm going to start pretty much right above where the tear duct is and follow the shape of the top of the eye. It might get a little bit wider up here at the top and then come down. And obviously there's as many different eyelids as there are humans in the world, or snowflakes. None of them are the same. But generally this will get you started. Okay, so we have the basics of our eye. The one last thing we're going to put in is a little reflection. And because the front of the eye is a curved, almost like a contact lens, we're going to draw this in a curve. So draw me a little backwards C here, and we're just going to make a curvy kind of rectangle. So we come down with a long line outside of the pupil, another line. We're making a curved, almost like a macaroni noodle. Okay? And of course, you will want to erase what's out of the center of that because it is the highlight. It will remain the lightest light of our whole drawing. So we don't want anything in there. Okay, so I'll go back in and put that in. And we are ready to go. So we're going to start with the pupil. Let's go ahead and fill that in, color it in, and it is the darkest part of your drawing. So you will decide how to establish the darkest darks. And that's really what's going to make this look realistic, is the difference between the darkest darks and the lightest light. You're going to learn really about what we call values in art, which is the difference of light to dark. So I'm just going in around that pupil and darkening that up. Okay, now we're going to go in around the edge of the iris and do the same thing. Now this is called contour shading, which means I'm following the shape of the circle with my strokes of my pencil. And I'm just going to go in and darken that up a little more. The light source for our eye here is coming from this direction. So we're going to always think of light coming here. That's why the highlight is here. That means it's going to be dark over here, but it's going to be darkest under this eyelid here. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb. The highlight on a sphere is always over the darkest part underneath it. All right, so we do that side, then we do this side. That also means that the edge of the iris and the top of the iris is going to be a little bit darker up here than it is down here, because this eyelid is sticking out over it. It's kind of shading it like a shelf over the top of your eye to protect your eye from all the things that may fall into it. Okay, so we've got the edges established here with our darks, and if you choose to take the extended class to really learn how to make this hyper-realistic, we go in depth about how to shade things, all the different ways to make shading just with your pencil. And that link will be available at underneath this class when it's done. Okay, so let's go in now. So the eyelid itself also casts a shadow on the eyeball. So we're going to go under this eyelid, this top eyelid, and very lightly put a shadow in along that line. Okay. And that's because it is sitting on top of the eye, on top of the lens, and it casts a little shadow underneath there. All right. Now we'll come into the corner and just put a curved line here where the tear duct is, and another little curved line beside it. That's real simplified anatomy there about what's happening in that corner. And we are going to start to shade the white part of the eye, which is on the sides here, which is also called the sclera. So let's start in the corners, and again, contour shading. Our pencil is following the curve of the eyeball. And your pressure on your pencil is going to decide how dark and how light. And we want to go from dark, dark to almost white here. So bear in mind that detail. If you want to have a picture beside you while you're doing this, it kind of helps to look. But I'm just wanting to be sure there's a nice gradation from dark down in that corner where it goes away from me, the ball does, up to light. And the same thing on this side. Light, 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 contour. My pencil is going in the shape of that curve. And as I get closer to the corner, my strokes are closer together and a little more pressure on the pencil, and that makes it darker. Okay? We don't want it white, white. Like, we want to leave this highlight as the lightest part. Okay, so now let's go in just above. We're going to define this eyelid here, and we're doing that by just a difference in values. There's not really a hard line there. We just want to make a little bit of shading above that on the eye, right above that, so it kind of makes it look like a shelf. So I'm going to go in and shade this on the side. And again, the eyelid is curved, so it comes down over here, and then it goes up over the top, highlight on the top, so my pencil's getting really light along the top, darker along this side. Then I'll do the same thing on this side. Darker over here because it goes down in, and I'm staying above the eyelid, or this little shelf here. And I'm just light strokes, and they fade away into nothing at the top of that eyelid. Okay, now same thing on the bottom. Over here on the corner, it's a little bit darker underneath this lid that's tipped out. We're going to leave that light there because that eyelid is literally tipped out towards you. And it's not a hard line. And so underneath the eye, that's still holding this eyeball in place, there's a little bit of a shadow here also, because the eye sticks out further than underneath your eyeball here. So we've got some shading underneath. Okay, then we'll go in and darken the crease where the eyelid disappears back into your cavity of your eye in your skeleton. So very sketchy. I'm just going along the top of that, darkening it up a little bit. All right, so that is the basics. I might darken this a little bit more over here underneath this eyelid as it comes down to the corner. Okay, so now I want you to get your blending tool. I'm going to use my blending stick. If all you have is a Q-tip, you can use that. Or if you have just Kleenex, you can wrap the Kleenex around the end of your pencil like this, and it gives you kind of a point. So you can use that to go in and do your blending. But I'm going to go ahead and use my blending stump. And so what I want to do is just kind of get rid of all the pencil strokes. So very lightly, I'm going to come in here and just very light pressure go back over those pencil strokes and kind of blend that in. And you'll see that you're almost painting with your blending tool, whatever it is you're using. So if you've gone too dark at this point, you can go back in and lift some of it with an eraser. But we're going to go in on the white part of the eye and very lightly go back and forth around this to blend that in nice and soft, because we don't want to see those pencil strokes. Okay. Then we're going to go in underneath the eye. You'll also notice that when you go in and blend, it actually lifts some of the color off. So it may take some of the depth away from your darkest darks, and you need to beef those up again. But we can sure do that. So I'm going in and blending. This is that shadow underneath the eyelid, and then it fades away to nothing. Okay, then I'm going to do the same on the eyelid. Just blend that in a little bit. I'm staying above the line of, remember we'd put the edge of that upper lid in, and we don't want to fill that in. We want to stay above that. So I'm blending that in. As it comes to the top of the eyelid, it fades away to nothing because that's where the highlight hits it, the light source. Back down on this side, a little more shadowing. So you can kind of see that it starts to give it form just with your values. And that's the cool thing about studying values, is you start to see that really we're just drawing the shapes of light and shadow. Okay, now I might go back over this crease here and soften that up so it's not just a graphic line. Okay, same thing along the bottom, very lightly. Now, your blending stump might start to get too much on it. If that happens, just take it to a piece of paper and get it off. Like you're cleaning it by just going off on the paper and turning it. You can see you can actually use it to draw with when it gets enough graphite on it. So you can go ahead and clean that up and come back in and soften this shadow underneath the eye. Don't get it in that eyelid. We want to leave that nice and light because it's tilted towards the light. It kind of disappears as it comes around to the tear duct there. We want it to just fade away into nothing down here. Okay, and then we would also make a little bit underneath going the opposite direction. So start out here underneath the tear duct and come down, and you would notice this on people. There's a little bit, there might be a wrinkle underneath here, or this kind of defines that little bit of bulge underneath your eye that also defines that this big ball, sphere of your eyeball, is being held in there. Okay, so we've got that pretty established. Now let's go back in and darken up our darks again. We lost a little bit along here, so I'm going to go up underneath this eyelid and darken that a little more, and I'm just pushing harder on my pencil. That's what makes it get darker. If you are using art pencils, maybe you're using a 4B or a 2B just to get your darkest darks here. And then along in this corner, like right where it comes up to the tear duct, I might darken that just a little bit. Soften that corner underneath here, come up along the tear duct, and then just on the edge over here, I might darken this, and then I just want that line to disappear. The line along the bottom of your eye where it rests on the eye is literally not there. We just want it to be a nice, open, soft, broken kind of line. So I might go back in here with my eraser and just go along the top edge of that. I just don't even want it to be a line. Okay, then I'll go back into the sides of my iris and darken that up a little bit, just at the top, and then it fades down to a little less as it goes down. Same thing on this side, and then fades down. Okay, then I might go back in. Now, sometimes if you hold your pencil almost parallel to your paper, you can go in and use the full side of that lead to get darker and fill something in quicker. So that's what I'm doing here, is just turned it sideways. And okay, now the iris is the coolest part of your eye. Everybody's is different. They're all different colors. Like I said, in our extended class, we talk a lot more and we show you the anatomy of that and what's actually happening to make that pattern, that cool pattern that everybody has in their eye. So that's a kind of an additional interesting thing in that class. But the pattern that comes in your iris really radiates out from this pupil. So we're going to go in here and just draw this kind of sunburst shape and broken line. But you know how you draw a sun? These little, we don't want them all to be the same, but I just want you to go in kind of and draw a little broken sunburst around that. And what I mean by that is, here's your circle. You know, if you were to draw a sunshine, you would do this, or a star, or whatever. I don't want them to all look the same like that. I want you to come in here around this pupil and just do a broken edge, kind of coming and going. This is the kind of line that you're drawing around the edge, okay? I need to sharpen my pencil a little bit. Okay, so that is the shape of the topography of that iris, and it's a fascinating thing. So in that, there's highs and lows that are actually built into this part of your eye. And so what you're seeing is shadow. And so what we're going to do is, from the center of our pupil, we're just going to draw some straight lines out. And again, so you can see them better, here's the pupil. We're just going to go in and draw straight lines out like this, okay? And I want them to, some be close, some be further apart, some are short, some are, I don't want it to look like a computer went in there and drew that for you, okay? So that's what I'm doing. From the center into that shape that I just made, I'm just going to draw a few straight lines that go out. Remember, do not draw anything inside that highlight. It needs to stay white, white this whole time. So we're just going to go around it. Okay, maybe color in some of the bottoms of those little points that you drew there. We just want a difference in shading, some lights and some darks around there. Okay, now from the outside, I want you to come in and almost meet it, but not quite. So see, I'm going to leave a little white border around those. And I'm just drawing some lines that come up to meet them. But do you see this little white border that's going to stay in there? I want you to leave that. And also, it gets lighter as it goes to the bottom of the eye. See how light my lines are here now? And then as they start to go up and get closer and underneath the eyelid, they get darker because they're more in shadow as they get up top there. So do you see how that worked? And I left a little tiny white border between the lines coming from the outside and the lines coming from the inside. And already it's starting to come to life. Do you see that? So you're going to go in and just, again, one more time, I might kind of go over the tops of some of them towards the top of the eye because it really is in shadow. I want some contrast right along the highlight there. So we want some dark darks next to it. But leave the bottom and leave that light. So cool. Very quickly with that highlight against the darks, it already starts to look like a real reflection. And that's what you would see in your eye. Okay? Now, let's do some eyelashes. Okay? Sharpening my pencil again. Now, remember about the eyelashes. They're thicker on the top, thinner on the bottom. And eyelashes are basically like this. Here's the eye. They are like fish hooks. Okay? Here's the eye. On the outside, you can see the whole hook. As they start to come up, the hook starts to turn towards you until you can't even see the hook. And then the hook starts to turn the other direction. You see that? And they get shorter and thinner. So on the outside here, we're doing a full-on fish hook or a J, whatever is more familiar to you. Also, they're not perfect. I don't want you to draw them all just separate. Some of them are clumped together. Some of them turn a different direction. Sometimes they're closer. Sometimes they're further apart. But I want you to be real purposeful about how, don't go in there and just get crazy. We don't want this to look like a caterpillar on top of this eye. So you might want to practice to the side before you go in on your eye. So remember, they originate at the edge of at this edge right here, this top edge, because that is a lip or the edge of the eyelid. So I'm going to start from here, and this is it could be a man or a woman's eyes, but we're going to do a woman's eyelashes. So they come out kind of that J shape and go up usually above the eyelid. So I'm going to put just a few of them in over here to establish that shape, and then remind myself that at the top here, they're literally straight up. And then as they come over this side, they're going to go a little bit to the left. So I know where to start changing my directions, okay? So I'm going to come back in here. I've got some long ones. I've got some clumped ones that are close together, and then some close. Remember, just try not to make them too the same, or it will not look real. Nobody's eyelashes are perfectly separated, and you can see as I'm coming closer to the center, they're getting straighter and straighter. And then as they go around, they start to turn the other direction, and they get shorter and more sparse. Okay, so remember that. And then you may want to go back in and just do there can be some that overlap or tilt another direction. You just don't overdo it, but remember that they kind of clump together usually, and they're not all perfectly spaced, okay? And then on the bottom side, we'll do the same thing. We start over here. They tilt out, and they're also directional. But remember, these are thinner and shorter. So they start to come straight down also as you get closer to the center. And then over here, remember, if you need to mark it, they start going this way, and they're teeny tiny. They don't go all the way to the tear duct. So same thing. Have a couple of those meet each other or clump together. and they originate at the bottom side of that lid. Okay, they do not go clear into the eye. That will not look correct. So we've established that there's just a difference in shading is what's telling us where that eye meets the eyelid. We don't have a hard line there. Okay, looking pretty good. Now over here, we might just do a little bit of shading underneath this eyelid, maybe a little circle to make it look like there's a little bit of moisture there, which is where it would gather on the inside of your eye. A little bit of a reflection there. Now, in the highlight of your eye, you actually would see along the top here shadows from the eyelashes. Okay, so very few. I'm going to go in here and just put a couple eyelashes that come down into that highlight. All right, so I'm going to go back in one more time, kind of beef up just that shadow right underneath the top there. Now over here on this edge, there would be a little bit of a shadow where the top lid maybe shades this bottom lid as it comes out. So I'm going to shade a little bit into that corner. Okay. I might come over here to this corner, and sometimes you can see a couple little wrinkles or creases where that eyelid gathers down to the corner. So I put a couple little wrinkles in there. Maybe I'll come over here and very, very lightly come along here and drop a little bit of a wrinkle line down underneath this side. Okay, and maybe I do a couple of those, one closer and one further away. All right, look at that, people. You guys are doing awesome. So I might go back in with my eraser now and just very lightly maybe take a little bit of this shading away, just to lighten that up just a tiny bit. I got a little bit dark. And there would also be shadows from the eyelashes on the white part of the eye. So this right here, I'm going to leave that because it would be realistic that they would cast a little bit of shadow along the white part of your eye also. Okay, now we're going to go just above the eye, and the fleshy part that comes out from under your eyelid and goes up to your eyebrow is soft and rounded. So right along the edge here, I'm doing contour shading again, which means I'm following the curve of the eyelid, and I'm just going along the outside edge here very lightly. Okay. I might have to zoom back out here for you guys to see this. And if we're going to do the eyebrow, I'm going to come down below just a little further in, and obviously all different shapes. Everybody has different eyebrows, but the general accepted coveted one kind of raises up to the top here and then drops down, maybe points down a little bit to the outside of the edge of your eye. So from here, I've got this line kind of established, and I'll go ahead and just very lightly pencil the shape I want it to be in. And you can do that too. And then underneath here, so I've got a little bit of shading on this side. And again, the more you tilt your pencil closer to the paper, the less harsh your pencil strokes will be. So tilt your pencil down. And then on this side, I'm going to do shading on the inside of the eyebrow. So I'm going to come down from the eyebrow to affect the edge of the nose, which is also not a hard line. Just some nice shading. Okay. Then I'm going to come in with my blending tool and blend along that. There's a little bit of a shadow underneath that eyebrow because it's, again, the brow bone would make a little bit of a ledge. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that in, come down where the nose is. I want to make that nice, smooth transition from shadow to nothing. And then also right above the eyelid, it's showing that it's coming jutting out kind of, and then up. And so the shading is what gives things form. So now we have the idea that this is a soft ridge here. It comes up and out from your eyelid. Okay. And we talk a lot more about how to shade things in our class that's on artwithlisa.com if you want to look that up. It's actually a little over an hour-long class that goes quite a bit more into detail and how to do the symmetry and draw the other eye. Today we're just going to do the right eye. Most people are right-hand dominant, so that's the one they're most comfortable with. So I'm just going back in, shading a little bit more on the inside, outside, beefing this shadow up underneath the eye like this with my blending stump. All right, let's put some eyebrows in. So the eyebrows start on the inside with tiny little fuzzy ones, unless you shape your eyebrows, which some people do. So tiny little strokes that go up and point to the other eyebrow, and then they start to fan out and go the direction of the eyebrow. Now, again, don't make them all the same. Every one of them is different. Look at yours in the mirror. Generally, they do follow somewhat of a line along the bottom, and I would also play with the pressure on your pencil, like maybe harder where the line starts and then let up a little bit. And so that gives you a line where you're not just getting hard lines like this, but I'm pressing hard and then letting up, pressing hard and letting up. So it's a little bit more of a point at the end. Okay, so along the bottom here, they stay fairly straight. You do want to let some paper show through, okay? Very few people have just such dense eyebrows that you can't see anything through them. It's possible, and some of you may be arguing with me, but generally we like to see a little bit of light, otherwise it flattens this whole thing out. Then we come up to the arch here, and very few of them trickle down on this side. All right, then in the middle, if you have wide enough eyebrows, yes, some of them actually go in a straight line, but as you get towards the top, they actually come from a different direction, and like they're forming an arrow. So these are coming down into the eyebrow from up top here. Okay, and same thing when they get up to the top, and then they fan back down. All right, so I've got a little bit of light showing in there. It's giving a little bit of realistic look. I might go with my blending tool back in here and just in a few places, I don't want you to go in and blend the whole thing, but here and there, just kind of blend those colors in. So, or not colors, but strokes in. So you have your eye. And there you go, everybody. Great job. 30 minutes. We drew an eye. I hope you learned something. I can't wait to see yours. Please take a picture of the one that you tried before and the one that you tried after. And if you want to learn how to do the full project, which is both of them, and you want to learn symmetry and how to, because it really is a challenge to do both sides, this is the class that we have online to do left and right side, and teaches you how to compare and contrast. Very few people in the world have perfectly symmetrical eyes, but we're kind of drawn to it, and it's a great challenge to try. You can find this online at artwithlisa.com. I thank you for joining us today. Hope you had a fun time and you've learned something, and please send us your pictures. Have a great day.